cats are just.
And he keeps bragging about how warm it is.
It was warmer. I was
Are you guys
in Florida.
Really? You're cold?
Freezing. We are freezing.
Well, you have a tie, it kind of traps the.
I think it does. I'm sweaty. I'm like,
Yeah.
to try to bend these sleeves more, you know?
Okay, well, now that
We're all good.
Rod has returned with our,
Captive.
yeah,
Yeah.
with his captive audience. With the quorum of the board present, I call the meeting to order. Roll call of board members. Commissioner Buck.
Here.
Commissioner Rooney has been excused. Commissioner Hoven.
Present.
Commissioner Goodson.
Here.
Commissioner Swenson.
Here.
Commissioner Evans.
Here.
And Commissioner Talcott is here. Would you please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Next item is the consent agenda. It's made up of routine day-to-day items that require board action that do not appear to have significant public impact. Items may be pulled from the consent agenda for separate discussion or vote by any member. This consent agenda consists of the approval of the board meeting minutes from April 28th, approval of the Finance Committee meeting minutes from May 20th, payroll checks totaling $69,506.52, maintenance and operation checks number 21410 to 21480 totaling $245,270. Approved passenger facility charges totaling $70,000, and the financial reports for April. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I move we approve the consent agenda as presented.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda as presented. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, it's unanimous. Okay, director's report, you got time to make up.
Oh, I have a long report.
Yes, you do. We got a lot of things to do.
The first thing I'd like to say is I'd just like to thank the board for committing the time this morning for the board retreat. We've got a lot going on right now with the master plan and other strategic things that are going on, and I appreciate the commitment, you guys taking the time to come up and spend it with us this morning. I think we heard about a lot of interesting and exciting and important things that we'll be dealing with over the next couple of years, so thanks again. The second thing I was going to report, and the cat's a little bit out of the bag on this one, but last Friday the tower contacted us and had Rod and I come up Friday afternoon, and they've identified a line of sight conflict with the new hangar construction over at Mang, and to our surprise, there's a pretty good obstruction of the view off of the runway exit onto taxiway T5 or Alpha 5, and I think that is going to be a concern for the FAA. And so, as we dug into that on Friday afternoon, we determined that the hangar was not filed through a 7460 airspace process, which is typically one of the things you do during design. And so there are some concerns there. The other note I would make is we had a reflectivity issue with a proposed hangar close to Front Range last fall, and the FAA identified that, and what they told us was there was a lot of metal along the flight line which they felt like was interfering with the localizer, potentially interfering with the localizer, and that we were very close to the minimum signal that we could sustain. So future metal objects, depending on where they are down that flight line in relation to the localizer, may cause the localizer to be inhibited. And so now that we know that there's no 7460 for that project, we're very concerned about the line of sight and the potential for reflectivity. So this morning Rod met with the Air National Guard folks to raise the concerns. I emailed the commander of the base, the new commander Smith, Colonel Smith, on Friday afternoon as soon as I got back from the tower, alerting to the concerns. We also had some operational concerns. One of the cranes was operating without a flag last week, and obviously we can't allow that. That's just simply against federal regulations on an airport. So we've noted those to the base command. We'll be working those issues. I can't readily tell you there's an easy solution to any of this. We have to work this through the 7460 process and see what mitigations the FAA can come up with. So that'll be ongoing over the next few weeks as we start to work this issue. The next thing I was going to mention is we had a really
Is there any direct financial ramification to the airport authority then?
I would hope not. The only solutions I can come up with off the top of my head, none of them, I'm not telling you these are easy. You could relocate or raise the tower, which there would be a local component to that. We'd have to pay for something to get that to happen. Obviously, that's not done tomorrow. You could relocate the connector if the FAA would be willing to deal with the line of sight issue on the taxiway A, but given that that's a primary taxiway, that may not be acceptable. And then the taxiway connector that you saw for the new runway 1634 connection is right in that same neighborhood. So there's a number of issues in that area that will have to be vetted through the airspace process. And then the other thing would be to lower the hangar. So I can't tell you, that there's an easy solution or that we're going to be completely immune from it. I think it'll just have to be worked and determine what the best course of action is and how it gets fixed. It's very surprising that a 7460 wasn't filed. We just had that conversation with the hangar project that was done a year and a half ago when they cut the hole in the door and added the trusses on top.
Who typically is responsible for that, the architect or the engineer or?
Well, so the project owner is always responsible under federal law.
Who is?
The project owner. If you're, there's federal law out there that says if you're building something taller than 200 feet, I think, you have to file one if you're within so many miles of an airport. If you're building anything over 500 feet, you have to do it anywhere, no matter where you are. And if you're building it within a proximity to an airport, you have to do it anyway. So there's federal rules that govern all of this. So the project owner is ultimately responsible. Typically, they use their architect or their engineer to file a 7460 because you have to have project coordinates. You have to have a surveyed foundation and your height of your project and what you're making it out of. It's even the process by which the FCC determines if there's any interference with radio signals or anything like that. So it's a very comprehensive project review, and somehow it just apparently wasn't done.
So just out of curiosity, and I guess for the record, we are the contractor on that hangar. So this is a little bit of a surprise, and it'll be interesting to see what happens here. But the guard, now you said they typically go through the engineer to file those 7460s?
Yeah, typically your engineer would file it because they're going to need elevations. They're going to need some level of project design to answer the 7460 questions.
So, so if you put out something like to add on to the terminal here, is that a part of your what you call out of the scope of work for the architect or engineer?
Absolutely. In fact, even the crane that would be used to construct it as part of that 7460.
And that is a part, because they can't design anything that is, that's your job to design, whether it's health and safety or fire or anything else. It's part of kind of the code for the building.
And so the county and the city both have in their building code a requirement for the 7460 if it meets certain criteria. So, that's one of the issues. The base doesn't follow local permitting, or building code for that matter. And so, that part of the review is sort of circumvented. There's somebody's building a 500-foot tower, which is on the agenda today, outside of town here, 400-foot I get that
Yeah,
wrong?
it's 400, 450.
450. In the process, of filing for that, the county identified they had to do a 7460. So the 7460 has been filed, and we've gotten the opportunity to comment on it. Whether or not we do, is on the agenda. But that's a normal part of the permitting process. Because it's on base, they don't go through the permitting. So the base engineering and that group is really, who's going to have to generate the 7460 in this case through their engineer and design process to get the data. Now that they're going to have to file a 7460 kind of in arrears. But hopefully we'll be able to get them to speed that up.
Yeah, I think that was the forum when they built the wind towers over here at United.
Identify
Yeah.
conflicts with
That's what it was.
7460.
Through the same
Because that
process.
one just barely made it, in the proximity to the airport, it was just far enough off that it didn't affect it, but we had to go through that.
Well, we do them for every building or project, even the road projects.
Even the road,
Getting it,
Yeah.
The car wash, the I-State building, all that we did, it just covers your stuff.
So
And
is this,
it doesn't cost anything.
That's true.
so who's the controlling authority? I mean, is there something that needs to be done to notify someone or cease and desist or something of that nature to?
Yeah, it's, so, it is airport land, ultimately. I mean, they're on leased area. So, the off-site is a different story because the FAA doesn't have, regulatory responsibility for areas inside the city. So we can comment, but it isn't always enforced. But since this is on, federal airport land, I can see the FAA aggressively pursuing this if they determine that there's an issue. And then ultimately, it would be left to us to enforce, whatever mitigations are required.
So it's the state of Montana and the FAA.
Well, it would be the FAA through us.
Yeah, through us,
Mhm.
working with the state of Montana.
Yeah.
So the National Guard's a state organization, not a,
Well, it's a National Guard Bureau is a federal organization, but of course the governor, has local jurisdiction over the what are they, MAGCOM, or what do they call it down there? The
Military affairs.
yeah, down in Helena, the local colonel that's in charge of the state.
Military affairs.
Yeah, there's an office down there that reports to him.
It's adjutant general.
Thank you. That's adjutant is not a word that comes to me readily.
So more will be forthcoming on that one.
Yeah. We had a really good meeting with a potential developer for the second paint hanger last week over at AdMax. We've had 2 folks express interest and 2 folks in the process. We'll interview a second candidate in another week and hopefully get some proposals out of that. They seem very interested in the project. I thought, I think there's just a lot of benefit being brought out of this process because as a contractor and developer, that gives the construction company all the interest in the world in controlling the costs and making the project happen. It forces that closer relationship between the ultimate tenant of the building, AdMax, and the developer to make good decisions. They even came up with some great ideas just even the other day that will benefit the project. So we're already seeing, I think, a really good spirit around that project of cooperation between potential developer and AdMax, and I'm really hopeful that that'll move forward. So ideally, we'll interview the second candidate. We'll ask for specific proposals afterwards. AdMax then will be in the driver's seat to make the decision on what developer they'd want to use. The 2 will try to negotiate a lease, and if that's successful, then hopefully the project would start construction next year, and we'd have a second paint hanger over there. So I think we had a great meeting last week. I'm excited to meet with the other team. I'm hopeful we can get something going on that project. So really exciting there. We've got a whole host of public meetings this week. I think every night there's a public meeting, and if anyone's interested, you're invited to any of these. No, I really mean it. It is funny, but but Tomorrow night is the noise Part 150 meeting. We'll be updating the public on the draft results of the Part 150. Of course, we're stopping the RSIP program as a result of the new Part 150 program. So we think that meeting will be pretty well attended. It's at 6 p.m. upstairs, and it'll be the public's first opportunity to give us feedback. The study's been open now it's been out to the public now for about a week. So they've had some time to look at it. We've answered a lot of questions about it going back several months already. And we also, about a month ago or more, we informed the 25 homes that had been designed for improvements this year that the FAA has asked us to stop the program temporarily until the study is complete. So they've known for about a month that the program is on hold, the 25 people that had design work done. And so far, I think we've had some feedback from those folks, not a tremendous amount. I think tomorrow night will be the first opportunity to really hear what's on everybody's mind. So that'll be good. Our consultant comes in, should be actually coming in right now for those meetings tomorrow night. So good meeting there. In addition, there's an I-15 corridor meeting on Thursday night at 6 p.m. That'll be downtown at the city building, the Mansfield Center, in I believe the Gibson Room, also at 6 p.m. And that meeting, they're going to be looking at the I-15 corridor study for the first time. It's the first public review of that. As you know, I'm on that committee. I've kind of sent some excerpts of that study around to some of the tenants to get their feedback. We're a little concerned about some of the options that are being presented. The good news is I think we're light years ahead of where we were 2 years ago in terms of them recognizing some of the shortcomings in the intersection. So I think that's a real positive that's come out of this study. This is a conceptual level study, so none of the design is really specific towards what they want to do, but there are a lot of options in there that involve minimal improvements and some traffic circles. The traffic circle in particular concerns me because that would provide right-of-way to outbound exit traffic. So if you're coming off the interstate, you would have priority over the airport traffic. So at times, I think we're going to have pretty extensive backups while the trucks are emptying off the interstate and everybody's waiting up there to try and get a turn in the roundabout. In addition to that, if you've looked at all at that intersection, you realize the overpass right now is at the apex of the hill. And so there would have to be a tremendous amount of dirt work done and retaining wall done in order to get a big flat area for a roundabout. As I pointed that out in the last couple of iterations of the study, and they've looked at their cost estimates, they've got the roundabout estimates all the way up to potentially $9 million, at which point you're just a few million away from doubling the overpass, which I think, as they said, well, the roundabout will give you enough capacity for 20 years. I don't know that I buy that. I'm not sure they're looking at the backup it causes into the airport. But even if it does, at year 20, it's completely broken and you have to start over. Whereas if you put in the overpass for a few million more, you've probably got 30, maybe 40 years of capacity, that you spend a little more for, but it's a long-term solution that you're ultimately going to have to do anyway after the roundabout loses too much capacity. So I think there's more to come on that. Like I said, we've sent that out to a number of tenants and told them, look, you should probably read this and look at it. iState reacted to it pretty negatively. I think others might have some comments from some of the others too about some of those options. But it's very early stages. I just think it's a good idea to get those concerns in the public record, because what's going to happen is they're probably not going to do anything for 8 years, 10 years. And when they pull that file back out, the next gen engineer is going to go, oh, everybody thought roundabouts were a great idea. And proceed from there. And what we want in there is some concerns about those roundabouts, I think. So that meeting's Thursday night. There's also a runway safety team meeting Thursday night. That's when we have all the pilot community and the tower come up, and they're actually going to burn some burgers on Thursday night at 6 p.m. Is that at the tower, Rob?
No, it's at our new shop building.
Oh, hey, that's awesome. So 6 p.m. if you're interested in coming up, grab a burger. Those are really good meetings. They talk about concerns in the airfield, the upcoming construction season, any incursions if we've had any. We haven't had any. But it's a good community meeting of the airport users. And unfortunately, I'll miss that. I get to hear exciting things about highways, but busy week, like I said, for evening meetings. So that's Thursday night, also at 6 p.m. Jumpstart is next week. That's one of the annual conferences where the airlines all come to town. They're sending on Seattle next week, and I'll be up there. I get to meet with United, Delta, Alaska. I think Allegiant took a meeting this time. And we're going to try to connect with Spirit also with that one. So that'd be a good opportunity to meet with some of the airlines that we're talking to and hear what's on their mind. We'll have formal presentations we give to them about our market. We're really anxious to hear some of the feedback from this spring because it seems like we're having a record spring through April. So I think that's really good. Good to get that feedback as how the airlines are viewing the market. Again, we're creeping towards that next round of upgrades, probably the 70-seat equipment in a couple cases, and so we'll get an update on that from them too, which will be really good. And then Laura attended a retail conference last week down in Las Vegas. Laura, would you give just a brief summary of that and how things went?
Yeah, basically it was 2 days of meetings, pretty back-to-back, and there were a lot of new contacts that we made, new developers that we were introduced to through the JGSC. There were certainly some that we were too small for. A lot of the outlets were looking at us and thinking that we were too small of a population and community for them. But there were some pretty solid leads, I think, from other developers. Talked to the same one that we've been talking to for years out of California. And they're still interested. It's just having the right moment, I guess, and getting them to say yes. So we have several things to follow up on, and some of them are actually doing some work too, just to see if there's anything that makes sense, I guess, for moving forward in this market. So they're doing some checking, and I'll be doing some following up with them, and we'll see if anyone bites. But overall, I would say it was good. It was good. Definitely more people were met, connections made, and as far as having the market research and the meetings, the help from JGSC, we definitely covered more ground this year.
And then the last thing I was going to mention is Holman Aviation contacted us. It looks like they're interested in proceeding with the paving. You remember we increased the budget to our project this year at the last meeting because there's potential that they would want to pave some ramp space out in front of the Homeland Security hangar. And they're interested in pursuing that, and they're asking if the board would be interested if the board would extend their lease term by a little bit further. We didn't get that quite on the agenda yet, but so we'll have to take it up at the next work session. But we'll get that added on there. And I don't know, Dwight, if you wanted to comment on that at all, or did I get that pretty complete there?
Right. As we get a little bit smarter about making these investments in the ramp in the airport's land, it's a sizable amount of money for us. And so we felt that it was important to take a look at the lease as well, for amortizing those costs and expenses over that lease. And so I know the timing was poor for this meeting, but we're working with the airport engineer to design it to the airport specifications and so forth. So
So we'll get that on the next agenda.
Okay.
That's all I've got.
So for the next item on the agenda is 2015-16 operating budget. I know that went to our budget committee, and what do you need on that at this point? Just the recommendation from, or comments or questions? Or?
Yeah, we do need to approve it. We have one more meeting at the very end of June, but of course that's a couple days from the new fiscal year. So ideally we'd like to get approval, but we did meet with the budget committee to go over the entirety of the budget. As I said last meeting, it's real similar budget to last year. There's not a lot of difference in the, we continue to project record revenue. This fiscal year that we're just completing, we think will be, I think it's our 5th consecutive year of record revenue. We're looking for revenue growth in the next year. On the expense side, the growth is relatively minor. We do have a little bit of expense growth in there. From year to year, we add paints and fuel. This year, we're increasing the fuel budget a little bit. It looks like we're just under budgeted the last couple of years. That's one of our biggest increases. We continue to try and grow the marketing budget a little bit. We're looking to partner a little bit more with the chambers. We talked to the budget committee last week on some funding mechanisms for future SCASD grants and advertising and that type of thing. But for the most part, the expense growth is pretty modest for the upcoming year.
Any comments or questions from
John and Maria did a good job of showing us what the budget was about, answered our questions, so we think it should be approved.
Can we approve it right now?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
We know there's gonna need to be some modifications a little bit in the future here, and especially if we decide to do artwork. And we don't get any donations.
And we don't get any donations. So would you like to make a motion to that effect?
I would move that we approve the budget as outlined.
Okay, is there a second to the motion?
I will second.
Is there any further discussion on the 2015-2016 budget? Any questions or comments? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, speaking of upgrading the appearance, they should pull in, make it black. That's what I always tell my wife.
That's right.
You have to mow green.
That's
You don't
right.
have to mow black.
That's true. On to the capital projects. We have a couple of capital projects, the smaller ones that haven't been approved yet this year. And so one of them is we'd like to finish up or start some maintenance on the parking lot. We've got about 1,000 stalls out there already. Some of them were built about 10 years ago and just due for a standard crack seal, fog seal type program. So with this project, we'd go out and fill some cracks. We'd do a fog seal maintenance topper on top of it and then paint. And so we're hoping to get quite a bit of that parking lot kind of marked off here in the next few weeks and blocked off so that as people leave, we can get that area vacant. We have the overflow parking available for the summer. Summer, once we get through sort of the graduation week or two coming up, the parking lot gets pretty quiet actually for the summer, so it's a good time of year to do these types of projects. And we'll have our maintenance guys block it off, and then we'll be out there starting this program hopefully in July, August timeframe to get the part of the lot down. We think this will probably take about 3 phases. Obviously, there's a portion of the lot that was just built in 2011. We won't be doing that part during this program, but there's still a good 700-800 stalls that we need to get start some maintenance on.
So John, the 65,000 then would just be for that portion, not for the whole program?
Oh, no, yeah, we're going to need several years worth of 65 to get that much payment done, we think. There's some fairly extensive cracking in a couple of those areas.
Some of the older stuff.
Get your hand into a couple of them. So we need to spend some time on that and get it cleaned up.
So we're not getting the whole parking lot, we're just getting as far as 65,000.
Yeah, just as far as we can get with 65,000, and then next year we do a similar size amount in the year following, and then we'd have it all done.
Well, the staff recommends completing $65,000 worth of parking lot coating and striping and crack repairs.
I just have one more question.
Yep.
Because of a difficulty I had in my own business with this. So are you going to put it out for bid, and then potentially the next couple years it could be someone else completing it, and that's not a problem?
Shouldn't be, because it'll be different areas. I mean, we'll be able
Okay.
to track back to who did what. But yeah, Rod will call around and ask for proposals on this one. We'll probably the first one we'll ask is United, because they're going to be here this summer.
Right.
And so if we can get a decent deal, that would be a good way to do it. But we'll call around and get.
They don't do that work, do they?
Yeah, I think so.
I think they subcontract it out.
Maybe they do some of it.
Yeah, I don't think they do that work themselves. I would suggest, I would ask them directly, but I'm not aware of them doing that work themselves. Not that they wouldn't be happy,
Find somebody for us.
to broker it for you, but that might not work as well for us.
No.
And there are, I think you should probably get a couple of prices, because there's an outfit in town that's advertising pretty heavily that might do that work too. And I would check back around on them. So, there's some people in town that have been doing it on a regular basis, so follow up with them. Anything else? Is there a motion The recommended action is as stated, for staff to proceed with what they can get done for $65,000. Is there a motion to that effect?
I'll make the motion to that effect, as stated.
As stated. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the staff recommendation of completing parking lot fog seal Phase 1 for a price not to exceed $65,000. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, now we'd like to have a maintenance pickup.
Yeah, most of our, as I mentioned before, most of our pickups are getting pretty old. We operate a number of pickups that are in excess of 20 years old. We have a total of 8 passenger vehicles in our fleet, and we have one truck just broke over $250,000. We also lost a truck last year in 250,000 miles. We also lost a truck last year in an accident. And so we want to begin to undertake a fleet replacement for our trucks. So we'd like to purchase one pickup with lights and radios and decals. We think we can acquire it for less than $30,000. So we'd like to acquire that truck for not to exceed $30,000.
Is there any questions or comments? Okay, then we'll entertain a motion to approve the recommendation of staff to acquire a pickup from the state vehicle list.
I do have a question. Does that have to go out for bid, or how do you?
No, the state every year bids a vehicle list, and it's fairly extensive in pages and pages of different kinds of requirements. And so they actually get bid prices back. And so we can just go to that list, and if we're willing to deal with the basic, kind of basic equipment packages that they've put together, which have always been fine for us. I mean, our trucks aren't anything special other than the 1 ton, which, it was purpose-built for, plowing and having a dump truck in the back. But we just buy the standard fleet pickup off their list. And we can generally get whatever the local dealer is that sells that brand, we can generally get them to match the price off the state list. And so that's typically how we've been doing it is, if the Ford is the cheap truck, we go to the Ford dealer and say, can we buy this truck from you? And last time around, Bison did us buy off the Dodge we got on Missoula, wasn't it?
No, to Helena.
Helena. Yeah, the local Dodge dealer wouldn't honor the state pricing, so we ended up getting that one out of Helena. But yeah, we typically buy from a local dealer off the state list.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
So moved and seconded to approve the staff recommendation to acquire pickup to match the state vehicle list pricing and outfitting for a cost not to exceed $30,000. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? It's passed. Now we're to UTV.
Oop, I missed a page.
Did you miss a page?
I did. I must have turned
Don't
to.
be jumping ahead.
There we go.
got-
All right.
yeah.
More stuff to
We're-
purchase.
yeah.
Oh yeah.
I sell ATVs, so should I move the gallery?
You don't have to move the gallery. No.
Straight up
It
state.
just, when we vote, you might just want to go on the record that you will not be voting. You're accusing yourself.
Okay.
Yep.
For discussion and vote.
Yeah, for
You're
discussion
out.
and vote.
Got ya.
Yeah. Mum's the word, man. Okay, John.
As we're, again, along with the fleet update with our pickup that we're trying to purchase, we're looking at ways to reduce our fuel costs and also better match the requirements of the job to the fleet that we have. And as we've talked through this the last couple of years, we're fairly certain that we can put a UTV into service in place of one of our trucks on many of our jobs. For instance, when we're out replacing light bulbs on the airfield, or if we're baiting bait stations for rodents, that type of work is a couple hundred feet and you're back out of the truck again. That type of work would be ideal for a UTV without the doors on. Now the back ends of these things can hold 1,000 pounds. So they're capable of carrying our weed sprayer. And we do a lot of weed spraying on uneven terrain that's tough on the trucks. So we think a UTV would be an excellent match for those types of jobs. What we plan to do is to dictate certain jobs that will be performed by the UTV. And when you're out in the field working those jobs, you would take that instead of the pickup. Each one of our maintenance guys right now has a pickup. So this would be assigned certain jobs. When you're doing that job, you'd take the UTV out. In the wintertime, we can put a plow on it and use it on the front drives. We think that'll be a real useful use of that vehicle too. We're using some tractors and some heavier vehicles today that aren't quite as maneuverable. And of course, if we hit anything with them, they're very heavy. We think a UTV will be a lot more useful in some of those tight areas. And so we're proposing to acquire a UTV with a blade for a price not to exceed $20,000. If this program's successful, our airfield speed limit out there is 35 anyway. We see in the future we may begin to convert the fleet more towards this line just to save on the fuel, and we think the maintenance and and some of the other costs of ownership plus storage. A UTV is a heck of a lot easier to get into some of our garage spaces than full-size pickups, and generally our full-size pickups have one occupant, so there's not a capacity need there that we're going to be short on. So we see this as a line of thinking that we may continue down in the future.
Any questions or comments? Check into the airborne qualities of an ATV or the sudden stop characteristics of a ATV when it comes to a stop after being airborne. Just kidding.
No, none of that.
You didn't check into that? You were going to buy something that doesn't handle well when it's in the air or when it hits ground?
Should we get governor to put on it? So
well, governor, there you go. Is there a motion regarding the recommendation of staff concerning the UTV?
I had a couple of questions, if I could. First,
You betcha.
what about heating? Because it's not going to be nice all the time.
Well, they have heating and even air conditioning. We would never get the air conditioning, but that's one of our requirements. It would have to
Heating
be
is
heated.
almost standard on them now,
Oh, is it?
on the more industrial ones.
Do we have any idea how long they last in this kind of work?
Well, the ranchers are using them pretty extensively now. I mean, if you talk to anybody that's ranching, I mean, that's really kind of their go-to vehicle now, even more so than their pickups. And they seem to be getting good long lives out of them. Both Bobcat, Deere, and what's the other heavier duty one they make? It's Kubota. They're all making pretty heavy duty long-term vehicles. I mean, I would see it similar to you think of it more of like a Bobcat or any other construction vehicle. I mean, they're built to diesel options and a lot more beefier components than they used to make on them. And that's one of the reasons we want to gauge it. Can we maintain it better? I mean, certainly it's more accessible than some of our pickups for regular maintenance. Even the rubber on them anymore. I mean, what we end up spending when we got to do a tire replacement on a truck, it just makes you want to pass out. Whereas we think if we get to a lighter duty vehicle, that that might be a little better for us.
Time will tell.
Yep. Experiment.
It's more hours than it is miles.
Yep.
When you're running something like that. Okay, is there a motion concerning the recommendation of staff?
I move we approve the purchase of a UTV at a price not to exceed $20,000.
Is there a second to that motion?
A second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the staff recommendation of acquiring a UTV for a cost not to exceed $20,000. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, with Senator Holden abstaining. Senator, did I say Senator, Commissioner?
I'm the son of a.
Oh, you're the son of a, yeah.
Son of a what?
Son of a senator.
Got promoted while you were there.
Okay. Next item is the value park lot.
As we talked about in the retreat, our parking capacity is, we continue to monitor our parking capacity. Revenue's grown about 60% in the last 5 years. significantly faster than the passenger volumes in that period, although passenger volumes have done well. And so as we look ahead into the longer-term future, and the master plan looks ahead into that 10-year period, we know we're going to need more capacity. Over the next few years, as we fog seal the lot and then eventually move into expanding the components of the lot shown on the blow-up map over there, the little green components inside the lot, we're going to have to cordon off areas in order to make those improvements happen. And so completing the value park and getting all those stalls over there is really an important component of the capital program to let us close down large areas of that lot to do those things. In addition, in the spring and fall when we were in our peak season and even winter, the value park offers a whole new product line for us to compete with some of the drop-off traffic and some of the hotel parking that's out there today by lowering the price. It's also a component of what we've been pitching the last few years about the affordableness of our airport. We think as we pitch the airport to the Canadians, we have both the lowest fares in the state. Now we'll have lowest weekly parking rates in the state. We think that's a value pitch not only for our community, that resonates not only in our community, but also up into Canada and the other places we market. So it's an important part of our strategy to grow the airport. In the longer term, this lot will eventually become part of the regular parking pricing structure as we outgrow the existing lot. So what we recommend we do is, as it says here in the memo, last year we built a large component of that for overflow. We used about, not quite half, maybe a third of it during Christmas time last year. We expect that to continue to grow. So we want to go ahead and build the additional 250 stalls to finish the lot. We also want to cap the lot with the final 2 inches of asphalt that we didn't have budget for last year. And we think we can complete those things for a cost of $350,000. That does not include the relocation of any of the revenue control equipment. All of the revenue control equipment that will serve this lot is being provided by the parking lot operator Republic as part of their contract extension that the board approved last fall. So this lot will get new ticket spitters. It'll be tied into the new toll booth. All that's being covered as part of the Republic extension from last year. So the $350,000 is just pavement cost.
So John, to clarify, it is just the 2 triangles closest to the water tower, not the third one. Yeah.
That did not work. Yeah, so no, actually the part that we're finishing this year
These 2, right?
is basically these 2 last
Oh, I'm in the wrong.
rows here. Yeah,
Oh, okay. Sorry, I was looking at the wrong thing.
So yeah, we did this component last year, but we only did a 2-inch asphalt on top of that because we knew we were going to need the overflow capacity, but we didn't have enough budget to do 4 inches, which would be a normal section. So what we're going to do this year is complete this extension, which finishes that block of parking, and then cap the entire thing with the full thing will be 4 inches then. And it ties into the toll booth will be here, so you'll just come out and go right into the toll booth. And then there'll be new ticket spitters added, one here, so you can bypass all the parking to get to the value park, drive out the exit road and come in here. Or if this is full, there's also a lane that goes in through here, and you'll put in your old ticket, code it with a new code, and then you can enter into the value park and get the cheaper rate.
And the green is subsequent years.
Green is future, yeah.
Okay.
As I said, we've got 3 years of fog seal, and probably about that time frame after that, we'll want to start thinking about beginning some of these projects, or all of them at once. There's even some projects in the middle there. So, yeah, we'll once we get this done and it's up and part of our regular revenue control system, it'll be a lot easier to come back and mess around in here.
God, I asked that.
Yep. So are you going to restrict access to that? Because you can kind of get to that lot by driving across country.
Yeah, so once the, you can, there have been bad people doing this.
But it's not wet.
Obviously,
It's
he's done it.
you don't even know they're coming and going.
Well, so with the extension this summer, they'll put in the post and cable, or post and chain system we have everywhere else. So it'll be post and chained all the way around. And then we nest a couple spots in there where they can take the chain apart and push the snow off into the grass too.
Any questions or comments? Okay, then we'll entertain a motion on the staff's recommendation to complete the value park lot for a cost not to exceed $350,000. Anybody like to make that motion?
I'll make that motion.
It's been moved by Dick. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
And seconded by Deb to accept the staff's recommendation to complete the Value Park lot for a cost not to exceed $350,000. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, that one's unanimous. The next one's not quite as clean.
Uh-oh.
Well,
Yeah, look back here.
no, that's the
Oh, yeah.
approval, yeah, we've got a little more work on this one.
Yeah, so we did receive one bid for the roadway parking project for this year. We combined everything into one project for bid. And as you can see here in the tabulation, we're over by about 17%. And the overage is in a couple of line items, particularly concentrated in the non-federal portion. And Bill Van Herky, who spoke at the retreat, is our engineer that works on that project for us. He's been working with United Materials on a couple of those items. I think it's likely we're going to pull a component or two out of this bid and have it done elsewhere, particularly the erosion controls one, where we think we can get a lot better pricing. And it looks like there's probably a couple of folks that are interested in that work. So for right now, what we would recommend is that we accept this bid, understanding that we're obviously not going to exceed the budget because we can't. The budget the board has set aside for this project. But then on top of that, that there's going to be some work done on this bid to get it down to the budget amount. So we'd like, staff recommendation is that we accept the bid of $2.868 million, and with the understanding the staff will continue to work this bid, and we'll be under this when we get done with that.
2.86?
Yeah, we're at
6.8, you said 6.8, I think you mean 8.6.
2.8, oh yeah, $2,868,984.55.
And their bid is compartmentalized, so we could pull parts out,
Yes, we can cancel work out of the contract the way it was bid.
and the rest of it stays the same.
Yeah, yeah, and so we're about 17% over engineer's estimate. What's that?
No penalties for doing that?
No, not the way we set up our schedules. Typically, we can just take work out. You can only add a certain amount typically on our contracts, but you can still add quite a bit. I think we allow 15% of each quantity. But then we can cancel whole components.
It's a quantities contract.
Yeah.
Oh,
So-
that's why they can do it. This is, you see schedules 1, 2, 3, and 4, but that is just the sum total. You probably
Yeah.
have pages and pages of
Yeah,
line items.
lists
didn't
of
you?
Line
items.
items. So
Yeah.
much
Quantity.
fencing, so much hay bales.
Each item was broken out, so if the quantities change, it goes back to a per unit cost. So if you don't,
If we want to get rid of all the hay bales, we get rid of all the hay bales.
yeah, or if the paving ends up
Maybe doesn't
more.
take as much.
Yeah, if more, the cost goes up. If it comes down, it's less of a charge. So you go out and measure every single thing and pay them accordingly.
Yeah. So like, for instance, the curb allowance, we don't have the specific curbs that we want to replace. We'll walk those, as the project gets near the end and say, take this section out, leave this section. I mean, that's how we do a lot of it when there's not, a specific amount that you can estimate, in the plan.
And these other potential bidders, with this being in United Materials' backyard and they having the only pit, just elected not to bid.
Yeah, we had one other contractor show up to the meeting, and they didn't ask any questions. I don't think they even had anything to write on, which was not encouraging.
Riverside.
Was that
Oh, Riverside, yeah.
Yeah.
Riverside doesn't operate here. They have to set up a plan or
Yeah,
buy
it's-
the asphalt from United or buy the gravel from somebody else.
We were hoping that somebody
All
might be
killing.
interested because we have that big program next year, and if you brought a plant up this year, potentially you could be well positioned for that big $9 million or so project next year, but it just didn't
The
materialize.
plant's gone by then. It's,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
The last load of asphalt that goes out, the plant's
it goes
gone.
with it.
I just had a question about, I guess I don't necessarily understand this exactly, but in the section called electrical ductwork, since that's one of the aspects that was over budget, the letter goes on to state that United's bid was $68,000 as compared to the engineer's estimate of $24,000. Montana Lines, Inc. is performing the work and was contacted to explain their pricing. is that their pricing, or why didn't we ask United Materials to
It's a
explain their
sub.
bid?
Yeah, it's a sub.
Oh,
So
okay.
United Materials, they have a series of subs, and so in a lot of cases, the engineer will contact the
Got it.
directly to the
So
sub
the
and
next
say.
page, they got.
And
some
oftentimes,
bigger
there's,
subcontractors.
I've had projects where they've said, oh, we didn't understand that. Now that we see what you're really trying to get, we can adjust this. I mean, I've actually had projects where it was that aha moment. And sometimes you'll see that, it'll be the lowest bidder, but they'll have one subcontractor like, what in the world?
Right.
And, oftentimes it's just a misunderstanding or, something they think might happen that you can say, well, we'll insure against that. If that happens, we understand the cost increase or, it does occasionally happen that there's just a misunderstanding in the bid.
And like the erosion control,
That one,
I mean, that's a fairly large,
that one, I don't want to wade into that one.
It's not a typo.
what
Well,
is erosion control? Is that literally
Hay bales,
putting-
silt
that is
fencing,
the- okay.
staking, that kind of thing. Apparently there's, United Materials number has quite a bit of mobilization in that one for whatever reason.
Okay.
I can tell you that the engineer's estimate of $10,000 is, if United Materials number is crazy, the engineer's estimate is equally crazy. You can't do anything for $10,000 anymore. And the rules are changing all the time. And you get to maintain those things for
Yeah, that's-
probably 2 years.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah, because you have to wait till the vegetation comes back. And you're not going to get the vegetation to come back before fall, probably. So it's going to be, you get to maintain it all winter long. And then you get to do it next spring when things start planting again. And if it's just grassland seeding, which some of
Yeah.
it probably is, and guess what, your wind blows, and so you throw the seed down, and then your seed ends up in North Dakota. So when the grass doesn't come up, you get to reseed it. And then
There's
you get
so
to-
little new construction on this one. I mean, that's what's really got me.
Even on the side, well, you still have to put silt fencing
Yeah,
all the way around the project. How big is your project?
yeah, that's.
It's a big hunk.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you get to run those little bales all the way around, and you get to maintain those for, the $10,000 number is, you can't do anything for that. You can't even get anybody, you have to write a plan to approve, get the state to approve it.
Yeah, and actually the plan's already in there and been approved, hasn't it, Rod? Didn't they do a SWIP plan?
Not on this.
No,
They'll have to
that's a
get approval.
contractor's responsibility. So they get to write the plan, and then they get the state to approve it, so you're not even gonna get that plan written,
For
to
10,000.
submit it to the state for less than probably 2 or 3 of that minimum. That's just part of the deal anymore. It's no fun. They just come, they thump you every time they get a chance, so.
Well, utilizing what we've learned from Mang, why don't we just skip that part?
Well, the consequences might be equal too, and you don't want the consequences to what Mag's gonna get. No, that's a different, so we are recommending the dollar amount, but not how you're gonna get to that.
Yeah, we accept the bid, and then, obviously we're not changing the budget authorization, so we're not gonna change the budget. We're gonna have to, reduce the project accordingly to get it within budget. So we're just accepting the bid.
We up to 55% of the contract has to be with United.
I think that's right,
That's
yeah.
what it said.
In order for them to be prime, that's a typical FAA requirement, actually. They have to self-perform 55%.
And the engineer felt that just having those other contractors on the list created a competitive bidding environment.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. I mean, most of our paving projects, when's the last time you had a second bid here, Rod? I mean, since I've been here, I don't think there's ever been one.
There must be some kind of federal guideline or something for that, because I don't know that you can get a competitive bidding environment
Yeah,
with
no,
the situation we got.
it's true. I mean, it's a challenge. It's something that, we've discussed it with the FAA on a number of occasions, and, there's not a real good solution. I mean, short of, buying a second gravel pit or something ourselves, which, airports have done that for major projects. They've gone out and acquired the gravel and railed it up here, or, something like that, that's a big undertaking.
Yeah, we're not going there.
No, that gravel thing is pretty competitive, pretty tough here.
So again, just so I understand, we're approving our,
We're accepting the United Materials bid.
With the estimated budget.
Schedule 1 only?
No, the Schedule 1 through 4 bid, and then, like I said, we have to stay within budget, so we have to.
And the budget amount is?
The budget amount was approved last month.
245,
No, that's not the budget.
that's not,
You have to have that, you have last month's notes.
oh, last
Yeah,
one.
Ready mix guys are too small for this kind of thing. Doing it?
245,
Others.
2,450,000.
Yep, so the budget that was
They got the
approved
same
last
gravel
month,
pit,
Yeah.
was 2.45 million.
450.
2.45 million?
Yeah, it was the budget approval. But in this case, we're just, accepting the bids, accepting the bid.
But not, the total work not to exceed.
Yeah.
Is there any further questions or comments?
So this is 245.
So when this is carried through, you simply have to decide which portions of the project are not done to stay within budget.
Yeah.
Is what I heard you
Yeah,
say.
we're gonna have to cut the scope, back maybe in a couple areas, and, have to, like I said, maybe renegotiate a couple components of this, and, that's what CH2M Hill's working on right now, is trying to get, take the large delta items and figure out, plans for, how we address each of those deltas.
So just not that I agree with a single bidder or where the numbers can come in, but from a contractor's point of view, if their number is so good, when I see each two of them, he'll go do it for that amount. Let's hire them. That would be a good option, but they don't do that. They just put out numbers. They don't have to sign a contract to do it for that amount. So it works both ways. So we're looking for a motion.
I would move that we accept this bid with the
Okay.
limitation of our original budget.
Of 2.
That makes about as much sense as accepting the bid. I don't quite understand that, but that's what we're doing, right?
That's what we're doing, yeah, you got it right. That makes it a little confusing, but yes. So we have a motion on the floor to accept United Materials bids, and then it will be up to staff to make sure that it doesn't exceed the approved amount of $2,450,000 for the work. Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second it.
Okay, any questions or comments? Sean?
Doesn't this, from your perspective, Brad, isn't this a recipe for disaster?
Well, no, that's why you have a quantities contract. You can pick and choose. If this is lump sum, it would be a little more problematic. It's going to be a challenge for staff. This is not the ideal situation, because it'd be much easier if it came, in under the budgeted amount. But we're looking to get this work done, and there's not a lot of good options out there, so it's going to be challenging. It's not an ideal situation. There's no doubt about it, in my opinion.
Well, I guess I'm bringing up the idea of any project that I've been a part of where we knew we were going in underfunded has been unenjoyable and a disappointment at the end. Is it?
Well, no, like I said, it's not that unusual, both in the private sector or the public sector.
And I
If you're-
assume that the schedules are all detailed as far as what falls under each schedule too, so that makes it a little easier.
Yeah, like I said, we have in there a quantity for curbing, concrete curb, and, we might just decide, well, this one's scratched up, but we can live with that until the next time we do curbing, so we might ignore that. Another big candidate, if we can't get relief on negotiating some of these, is the cap on that lot. We might say, you know what, we've got a huge quantity contract coming up next year, maybe we'll get better pricing on to go to 4 inches on that parking lot. So maybe we'll not cap the area that we built last year with the extra 2 inches and wait until next year. 2 inches of asphalt will, survive another 2-3 years without really much degradation. In the long term, you want the 4 inches, but, next year would be okay to do it then. So, I mean, there's tools like that where we can give up something and delay it into a future project because we're constantly doing paving. We've always got asphalt quantities, every couple of years that we can add asphalt to.
When it gets right down to it, so I mean, we're $419,000 short, so a little bit of curb here and a little bit of curb there isn't gonna get us to where we want. If we don't get some major concessions, then we're not gonna be able to do all the work. And I would think that you're gonna have to do a big ticket item, and it's probably gonna be the easiest one is probably gonna be like the parking lot or something that you can identify and that can be broken out and that doesn't have to be done right now. And then they'll have to come back and look for some more money.
Which parking lot are you referring to?
The
value-
new value park.
The value
Wasn't
part.
that the 350,000 we already talked about?
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. So in that project, we've got the expansion of the lot, but then we also have a cap of the existing lot. And so that cap alone is probably, I don't know, 50, 60, 70, 80,000 bucks. That's one area where we could say, okay, we've got a big asphalt program coming next year. Let's forego the cap in order to save that money for the remainder of the project. And that's-
Those are two different budget items, right?
Well, so they're two different capital projects, but it's one, we've put all the program in one bid this year. So everything's in one bid, the budget authorizations are separate. Yeah, that's true.
Okay.
So I take.
That was the confusion where I had.
Right, so yeah, actually, what we should have said is we don't just have 2.45, we have 2.45 plus 350,000 that you just approved. So we have 2.8 actually.
Oh, okay.
So we're a lot closer than, I'd forgotten, my bad.
Okay.
Yeah, because some of the quantity is in the other capital items. So we have 2.8, we're about 100,000 over.
Just academically, John, if you had to choose between completing this in its entirety for approximately what their bid value is and foregoing the value lot for now, would that be a good choice, or would you rather have part of both?
Well, we've got most of the value park done. We were hoping with the oil prices coming down that we would add the cap this year because it might be cheap. So the first thing I would cut out of the program is capping that other 2-incher because it's not going to degrade in a year, and we've got a huge asphalt program next year. So one of the first things I would look to cut is the asphalt quantity for the cap on the existing value park.
For the cap, but the actual expansion of the...
I think I would proceed with that to get that area in, and I might even proceed with it at 2-inch.
Yeah, which is 2 instead of 4.
Yeah, and so there's probably $100,000 I could save right there on that, on the value park, just by doing those two things to keep us under budget. And like I said, we'd probably scrutinize the curb a lot more. We'd probably, look at those types of things. I don't want to give up on milling and overlaying because, if you get a bunch of cold seams in a road, it just becomes a mess. I mean, that's what comes apart. You want to have hot joints and, pave all the lanes at once, pave it in one long string if you can, because joints are where most of the, you can see it now. If we go out there, most of the failings on the joints.
I think it was a little bit confusing because the line item before was $350,000. I guess I didn't realize that was a part of this one, so that made it confusing for me. Knowing that the 2,450 plus 350, it's much more doable.
Yeah.
Some of this-
Yes.
Yeah,
Much more doable.
Some of this is subsidized work and some of it is not.
That's right.
So, I mean, if you have a budget overage, obviously you cut the stuff that's not.
Yeah.
But if we do have an overage, it still comes out of our pocket, right? It's still a viable project according to our, does it have to change with the feds in order for us to, do we have to reapply? Or do we
No.
just pay the difference?
We have administrative leeway. We can add 15% to our grant program if the FAA concurs without any formal action. So, if it's a little bit over on the federal side, we can go back to the FAA and say, we need another 15% to get this project done because of bid prices or whatever. Generally, they give you that money. And so we have that little bit of relief too, but we would still have to come back to the board and ask for more dollars at some point in the
But it would be
future.
10%
Yeah.
of the 15%.
Right, we would be 10% of the 15%. So,
15's gonna cover what we're short.
It would if it's in the federal portion. Most of our over is non-federal. And see, the non-federal is the employee part, is the value park. So, you know, that's why that's kind of top of
That's all
my
our-
priority list. But,
Bring
you know,
down.
yeah,
That's the other way around. That's 100, 0, there, isn't it?
yeah. Yeah, it's 100, probably 0, and then we've got a huge program next year that's gonna generate a lot of asphalt volume, so we might be able to pick that one up at a lot cheaper rate next year.
Okay.
And Rod, are we gonna pave the SRE building with this too? That's next year too?
Yeah.
So we cut that one out to get to this project budget. We were hoping to do the SRE parking, around the area's gravel right now, but that actually is holding up a lot better than I thought it
That's not
would.
doing too bad.
So we'll probably add that into next year's volume too.
Okay, so I will ask you, Dick, if you would like to amend your motion to approve the proposal from United Materials to an amount not to exceed
2.8 million.
2.8 million.
The combined
Yeah,
350
yeah.
plus the 2.4, whatever.
We're approving the bid and then realizing that the
Sure,
staff
'cause it's-
has up to 2.8 instead of 2.45, which is what the original motion.
Yeah, no, that'd be good. What I just said was just that it was withheld to the constraints of our original budgets.
Okay,
That sounds good.
all right, now that we understand what that is, I guess we don't have to amend
Yeah,
the
I
motion.
understand.
But
Those-
you can amend it if you've already voted on the other, right?
Yeah, well, and I guess
Yeah.
that was my confusion then, because the way he stated, I'm the one that put it like that, the motion was to the staff's budget.
Right.
We just didn't understand what the budget was, so now
That
that we
was my
understand the
fault.
budget is 2.8. If there's no further questions or comments, all those in favor of the motion as presented, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, and Deb had to step out for a phone call, so. Okay, so, are there any, with no further items to come before us at this time, is there any comments from board members? Commissioner Buck, do you have any comments at this time? Commissioner Holden, Commissioner Goodson, Commissioner Swenson, and Commissioner Evans is not here. I have no comments at this time. Are there any comments from the public at this time? With no further business to come before the board, I declare the meeting adjourned. And if there's, I think we're ready to roll into the, does anybody want to?
No, let's get going.
Let's get going, okay. We are moving on to,
I am kind of surprised. Normally when a bid this size, I would have thought maybe we'd see somebody from the.
Oh, come to the meetings? They used to come to the meetings fairly often.
They don't usually come.
But they came there for a while, they were coming pretty regular. I remember even Bob came a couple times.
Just feeling pretty sure.
okay. With the quorum of the board present, I call the Airport Authority work session meeting to order. Please let the minutes show that all commissioners are here, as we're here with the regular board meeting, and Commissioner Rooney is not. So call the meeting to order, and the first item is the car condo contract.
Laura, you want to present that one for us?
We've had, obviously, we've been talking about the car condos today a little bit, but they're right out here as you come in, and they're just the individual garages that we just lease the ground to them, and then they build them. This, I guess it's the Great Falls Car Condo Association now. They build them and then they sell them to individuals to park up here. And so we had sent them a letter in 2013 telling them that we weren't going to allow any future phases. They had it broken into 7 different phases, and they have completed 3 of the phases out here today. So they were fine with that, they understood that, and we said we would try to find them another spot. We think maybe it makes sense down in like by Front Range, that there may be some spaces down there that they could further expand and then have a car from Front Range, because they're there 24/7, that could drive them, drive people down to the terminal. But they're not interested in that right now. But they did come to us, they were looking at the area, and there's a little section here. I don't know if you can see it. John, did you look to see if we can see it?
Well, we had those cones out there last meeting, but yeah, it's basically where the buildings
Okay.
are uneven.
Okay.
You kind of see one pokes out, and there's a grass field in front of the other.
So there's a little section that will allow them to do basically their phase 4. It's not land that we would be using for parking, for the parking lot expansion. So it would really just use that last little piece of land to fully utilize the ground.
They're not already leasing it?
They're not already leasing it, no. They just would pick up these leases as they built their next phase. So we're not sure on exactly what the square footage would be right now. I kind of looked at just what their other phases were with that 8,000 square foot, but we really do need to go out there and make sure that they are paying for everything that they should be paying for, including their the entry and exit into those car condos. So we'll make sure to go out there and square everything up and make sure that we have it all included in this final phase if you guys want to move forward with this. So just based off of those kind of estimated numbers of 8,000 square foot, it would be an additional about $2,200 in annual revenue to the airport. Their lease does go through December 31st of 2022, and then they have an additional 10-year option. So it would be nice to be able to finish that out for that lease as well.
So just out of curiosity, I presume they do their own snow plowing?
They do. They're responsible for all their maintenance
Okay, the maintenance on their buildings. How about, do they do any landscape?
and landscaping, yeah,
And
and weeds and.
and all that. So
Yeah.
for everything that they snowplow and landscaping that they maintain, I would assume that that's a part of their square footage.
Yes, it should be, and that's what I'm saying. We need to double check and make
Yeah, 'cause
sure
we
that
kind of ran
that's.
into that with the
all
hangers too. It
included.
takes more than that,
Yep.
obviously.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
Yep,
So
because
let's
it may
make-
not be, and we do need to make sure that it's
Yeah,
all
just
in
so they
there.
understand that, they get to
Yep.
bump it up. Any comments or questions? If not, why don't we move that?
I was just gonna ask, you know, if we're not sure what this is about, how many parking spots would that be if that wasn't a car condo? 50 more?
About the same number of parking spaces as car condos, maybe a few more, but yeah, it's an awkward position because it's right where the long-term and short-term lots branch off.
Right.
So, you know, there's not a
Oh.
convenient way to lump that in. I mean, we could mess around with the entrance, but, you know, we'd spend a lot of money reconfiguring, you know, road just to pick up a couple of stalls by the end of it. It's really, it really is an awkward position for us to add parking stalls there.
So looking at Deb's little hunk of green there,
Yeah, see.
so it isn't affecting her green triangles over there?
No.
You could
No,
expand
No, I
it?
was asking if
No.
that was.
Yeah,
Yeah.
or you could expand that.
But he
Yeah, right,
says
we're
it
gonna pick
wouldn't
this
work
up.
very well because
Yeah,
of this.
see, I mean, it's just not, you could take this road and kind of bring it around or something, but it's just not in a great spot for expanding parking, because you're gonna have people walking right across the main entry road, you know, where people are trying to get into the parking lot. You know, if you put stalls right there, it's right where the two lots are kind of, the throat of the two lots, really.
So you're talking this little triangle,
So right behind the agenda item is the,
That little one right there.
Yeah. Just expanding it down to the end of it.
exactly. This is what they want to extend, and all of the traffic off the parking lot comes through this divider here. So, I mean, you have to either bend the road tighter, so that people aren't walking right across behind where all the cars are trying to get in. You know, you bend the road around and maybe extend this out more to get more stalls in. But it's just it's an inefficient little corner of the parking lot for us to try and get more parking in.
How many spaces does that add?
So yeah, that's what I was saying, that they're gonna get about 10, 12 more parking condos in there. So I mean, we could probably fit, you know, maybe 15 or so parking stalls in that area, but it's right where the entrance to that road comes in. If you go out there and look, the cars drive on the other side of that divider, in and out of that long-term parking lot. So, I mean, we'd have to, do something there to get the pedestrians across that flow of traffic, little crosswalk or something. Because I mean, we could.
Little white squares seem to
Yeah.
do a credible job.
Yeah,
Or a goose crossing sign.
yeah, there you go.
Everybody stops.
Everybody stops for both. Yeah, I mean, that is the other option. We could simply tell them no, and, we could, try to get those other parking stalls in there. It's just not a real efficient spot to get them.
What's the difference in price or annual revenue versus the car rentals versus?
So we got about 1,000 parking stalls roughly, and let's say we're gonna make $1 million in parking revenue a year, so, what's that work out,
$1,000.
10,000 a stall? And that would-
1,000.
1,000 per stall, versus, and there's 15 of them, so say, full occupancy, we'd get maybe 15,000 out of those stalls a year versus 2 out of these guys. Yeah, land rents are always worse than active revenue producers. But, then you gotta factor in the cost of us building those stalls and
Redesigning.
trying to get that traffic flow around there. I mean, it can be done, it's just, if you go out there and look, it's not a great spot for parking stalls. They kind of end up marooned over there.
Next time around, this will probably be a tougher discussion for them.
Oh, we don't plan, we've already
Yeah.
told them they can't have any more over here.
After this?
Yeah, this is it.
They'll have to go.
They're not gonna are they gonna actually start leasing this land prior to development, or are they going to wait until they have the condos sold?
No, they start leasing it as soon as they start building on it.
Okay,
As
but
soon
are
as
they
we,
planning to build?
they would like to start
imminently?
building this
This
season
summer
if
is
we're
when they'd
ready.
like to build. I mean, but realistically, by the time pull permits and everything else, probably next year.
If you get a permit. Yes, Dwight?
It's, in my thought process, it's likely that their potential customer, you're already in your parking lot. So, not that it's a lost revenue for me in that standpoint, but it takes a little bit more pressure off of your parking lot for those people to move over to that. So you still capture the same customer in some regard.
They just don't pay as much. Okay, if there's no problem with that, we'll just move it to the regular board meeting, board agenda. Okay, speaking of 7460s,
Somebody does 7460.
somebody does it. If they're a lot further away from the airport, they do
Sure are.
7460s, but they're taller too.
We are notified when the 7460's been filed that impacts our region, and some folks are trying to build a fairly tall radio tower. As you can see from the attached materials, it's by the time you get done on this yellow chart here, it's about 4,220 feet above the ground level there. And it's located kind of out on the outer ring.
That's mean sea level out.
I'm sorry, mean sea level, yeah. And the tower itself, that would be a very large tower.
Well, they wouldn't let that one in.
So it's almost a 500-foot tower.
Okay.
What's interesting about the geography of this is it does push the ring of tall objects further out from the city. So everything's, you can kind of see these little arrows here, these little points are fairly consolidated kind of in the rings around the airport there, fairly close to town. And then this one's pretty far out relative to the other ones. And it is fairly tall. Of the obstructions out there, it's one of the tallest ones. And it is somewhat in line with our runway heading. The FAA has gone through the proposal. The local tower, the local airspace that's directly attributable to our tower, there's no impact. There's no impact on our approaches.
What isn't an impact on the approach?
There isn't any, no, but there is an impact on the height of which they would circuit traffic around the city of about 200 feet. So I think we're right around 6,000 feet. They said they would move the height up maybe even 100 feet, I think it was. It ends up to be like 6,100, 6,200, that they would move traffic around the area. They would raise that height a little bit. So there is a small impact to the Salt Lake Center. We did have one local pilot come in. They actually brought in these materials and is concerned about the height of this. In full disclosure, I think they own the neighboring property. to the tower. This is out by the gun range, the community gun range out there. And so I told the pilot that I would put this on the agenda and see if the board is interested in us commenting on it. Normally, if it doesn't impact our approaches and the tower isn't raised an issue with it, I would not comment on it. I've also emailed Joe Briggs over at the county and mentioned to him that this is closer to the Malmstrom approaches than most of the other high obstructions. The county does have a process in place to vet air obstructions, even though that runway is not open. They do monitor that and ensure that they're protecting the airways around around Malmstrom for the helicopters, and if they would ever reopen. As you can see, it's further out to the east there, higher than anything else in the vicinity as you get closer to Malmstrom there. So I have notified, mentioned it to the county that hey, you might want to consider commenting on this, and if make sure they've seen it. I doubt they'll comment either.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily see a reason to comment on this, but I do want to bring it before the board just to ensure that there wasn't any feeling that we should comment on it from the board.
I agree.
Yeah, I mean, so anybody think we should comment on this? So, I mean, at this point, we wouldn't even recommend it to get it to the regular meeting. Yeah, we're not going to move it to the regular meeting.
Stay at the work session.
Yeah, we'll just keep it in the work session, so now you're aware of it in case someone brings it to your attention, but.
So you're saying either one of these, John, is fine by us?
Either one of which?
Well, the first proposed location and then
The second one's clear out Fort Benton.
Oh, that's what I'm saying. I'm trying to figure out this.
That one I really don't care for.
So ask him why he put it in our agenda, just to make things.
I was trying to trace where it moved to, and
Yeah.
I'm like, I can't quite get that to match up.
Yeah, it's, they have.
We really don't care about that one.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's actually a repeater for Fort Benton, and so it can be either, I guess, here or there, and I think the pilot's objecting is saying, why don't you put it in Fort Benton then? And, that makes some sense, I guess. But there are quite a few obstructions in that general vicinity over there, and this one would be higher and a little further out, but.
Probably a little closer to their property.
Yeah.
Okay, unless there is an objection, we will not be moving that to the regular board meeting, and that puts us up to the passenger facility charge.
Yeah, the airport collects a passenger facility charge under FAA regulations. We're allowed to charge up to $4.50 per passenger for use of our facilities. Those dollars can only be used on eligible projects, which is primarily airfield, some of the common use terminal stuff, and some of the entry roads. Although in our current project, we're not planning to use any. The majority of our passenger facility charge revenue goes towards the completion of the terminal ramp, which was built a number of years ago and debt financed. And so the original PFC application that was filed on that was about 8 years ago, and it had enough collection authority at the time to consume all of the passenger facility charge revenue every year to pay back that debt service. Well, the last 5 years, our passenger volumes have grown enough that we've collected a surplus of PFCs, and we've been using that surplus to pay for the match on the residential sound insulation program the last 3-4 years. And now that the residential sound insulation program is no longer in place, or shortly won't be in place, we need to reallocate those dollars to new projects. In addition, we're only allowed to collect a PFC application for 7 years, at which time your authority expires unless you have debt underlying that PFC application, in which case you can pay out the debt. So a component of our PFC application will expire in about 5 years from the last application that we did 2 years ago. So we have to, one, extend the authority, or it makes sense to extend the authority to the full 7 years. And then secondly, we need to replace the authority to spend from the RSIP program to new programs. And so Maria has been working on PFC application number 5, which will put new projects into our collection authority, including the eventual expansion of the SRE building. We've built 4 bays. We want to build another 3 bays down there. That's 2 or 3 years off. We also want to pay for the local share of the 1634 taxiway C infrastructure, which will be nearly $1 million. by the time we get done with it over 3 years, including the redeclination to 1735. And then on top of that, we also want to pay for a snow blower that we'll buy 4 or 5 years down the road. So this application will put these new projects into the eligible pool, and it'll also extend our collection authority out to 2023, so we can continue to collect that. We think the total collection is under PFC number 5 will be about 1.9 million in that period, and we need to get authority to submit that application. We'll also concurrently be asking the airlines if they'd like to have a consultation on the projects. We've already discussed the project with them, so I doubt they even want a consultation. But we are required to submit that to the airlines for comments.
So is there any comments or questions? If not, we'll just move that to the regular board meeting. So next item is task order number 14, final design for runway 1634.
Yeah, the FAA has asked us to proceed with final design on 1634. We still have a couple of uncompleted technical questions out there. For instance, the FAA has not determined whether or not they're going to accept what we would call the shed section of the runway. And what that simply means is the runway, instead of being crowned like you would build a road today, it tilts to one side. Some people say that the current requirement of the FAA is to have crowned. It's not exactly that clear in the specifications, but the FAA wants to evaluate the potential for crowning this runway. That is problematic in this case because most of the drainage in that part of the airfield all goes out to the one side, so we'd have quite a bit of regrading if we're going to dump water on the opposite side to get the water to flow back to the drainage where it's trying to go to. So the FAA has asked us that, in addition, the flight, flying the runways, the approach, what do you call it, Rod? I lost my word there. To have FAA fly the runways.
Oh, the flight check?
Yeah, the flight checks and the procedures are way backed up. So we need to start getting that data into the system so that we can schedule our flight check for the new approaches, because we're moving the threshold and we're also narrowing the runway. So it's all got to be reflight checked again, and we need to get that data into the system sooner to get all that scheduled. So the FAA has asked us to accelerate that final design of 1634, get that started now. We have a fee proposal that you see here. We just received it per the date last week, and we need to get it get an IFE done, independent fee assessment. Rod's working on getting that IFE right now. By the time this comes to the board in June, we'll have hopefully a negotiated fee proposal. If not, we'll have an IFE and be in the process of negotiating it. So we'd like to move this to the next board meeting for approval.
Any questions or comments? If not, we'll move that one to the regular board meeting.
Want me to go ahead on?
Yep, go ahead on the next one. Sorry about that.
That's right.
I got a little bit distracted because I don't have to go up in the tower. I just got a picture from the tower.
Oh, you got one?
Looking across the building.
It's a nice looking roof.
Yeah, the building's not completed, but once those last few bays of trusses will go up, it's not obstructed yet, but the building's not finished yet. So once you get up there,
That is an optimistic viewpoint.
Yeah. So if you just leave off half the building, you'd probably be okay.
I still say glass roof would do it for you.
Yeah, you could see all the way through the building. There you go. If the reflection that
You could just put a webcam on a post
Yeah,
on the other side of the building.
Yeah, put a couple of mirrors out there for crying out loud. They can look into. Anyway, so sorry about my distraction. You gotta go up to the next task order for the.
It's been haunting me for 5 days. I know what you mean.
So you want to share the.
So task order 15, we're at the point in the project where we need to negotiate our construction services contract. The engineer will be on site for the summer program. They'll be doing all the proctoring on the asphalt to ensure we've got all the compactions we need, all the densities we need, and all those things that you monitor on asphalt. They'll also be working out there to make sure they're working within the bounds of the program, or staying in their staging area, all those types of things during the summer program. And so we have a fee proposal. Again, Rod's requested an IFE from an independent engineer. Once we get that IFE, we'll negotiate a final budget for this and bring that to the June meeting.
Any questions on that?
Well, I understand. The first one was on a lump sum contract, and this one's on a firm fixed price?
Yeah.
I don't understand the difference between those, and then part of it's on a time and materials.
So the FAA requires on design projects that we have to do lump sum. I'm not really sure what their justification for that is, but that's the,
Lump sum meaning you just pay them all at the end of the project?
it's just one fee for the project, yeah. And so, you have to, for whatever reason, design projects are done that way. In other cases like this where you've got, where they're gonna be actually using some materials, like if they use a construction trailer, that type of thing.
It's
there's-
not actually paid at the end.
No, they're gonna have progress payments.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're not waiting until the end.
Yeah,
No.
15% design, 30% design, those
But
types
it's a
of things.
fixed price.
Yeah.
And the difference between that and a firm fixed price?
I guess that's really the same thing. I mean, if you think about it, I mean.
I didn't know what the
Yeah,
difference would be.
the firm fixed price, you're going to pay exactly what you've negotiated payment for. In this case, there are some reimbursements though for, expenses they have during the project. Some cases they'll rent an office, for example, for your employee. This time we're going to provide them an office, so they don't have that payment.
And then, so part of it, 3 and 5, they're gonna bill us based on time and material, so it must be some, I don't know what 3 and 5 are. Tasks 3 and 5 are based on a time and materials, I don't know if that, so none of that's in the 302, I would guess.
I'm not
And
sure
I think
where you're
that's
looking.
survey and
Number two.
geotech
Oh,
work.
yeah.
Oh, so it's somebody else they use for
Yeah,
the
that'd be a
survey?
sub, like NTL or. and
Well,
some
like
surveyor.
the asphalt lab and things like that, because, we don't have, it's not their asphalt lab, so we'll have to pay for those types of exams, that, those types of materials and that type of thing.
And the NTE is not to exceed.
Yeah. You might want to have those schedules available for us next time, just so we can review it and have a better understanding. It's,
That would be good.
just, not that we can change anything, but it's just,
Yeah, it's broke out.
yeah, that we can give us a better idea.
So what you're saying in essence is the 302, 407 does not include that stuff.
Well, right, and so this
I
is,
think
Oh,
that's
it
what.
this is the engineer's
Well, now that I
estimate.
need to know what NTE is, maybe it includes the top end.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is the engineer's estimate, but it's not
Yeah.
negotiated yet either, so
Right.
we'll have a line item budget for each of these items that we'll negotiate. Next time we come, there'll be it'll have the actual tasks and what they asked for and what we agreed, or what we think we should agree to.
Sounds good to me.
Any other questions or comments? Any other items that any board member would like to add to the agenda for next month? You do have one.
I do have one. I would expect that shortly, like within this week still, you will all be getting John's evaluation process form to complete with the plan to have his evaluation during the June meeting.
So when do we think we might get those?
Well,
Before next year? Do we have a meeting
yeah.
In June.
in June?
We don't meet in July.
Don't meet in
typically.
July,
Yeah,
yes, okay.
We can, I mean, we
Oh,
have.
that's okay.
Well, essentially, the format will be similar to prior years, or maybe a few tweaks to it, but we'll kind of put together a proposed timeline and process to make the process flow a little better, and Mr. Rooney is the one working on that at the moment, so I don't have an update. He thought it would be very soon.
Okay.
Deb and I are on the committee. Dan, Deb, and
And Deb, Debbie and
Deb,
Deb.
Deb, Deb, and Dan.
Deb, Deb, and Deb.
Then I
All
have,
these 3Ds.
I have
3Ds.
just one other reminder, the fly-in on the 19th, July 19th, the Bravo 369 guys will be coming to town on, I'm sorry, the 17th they'll get here, and then they'll be here the 18th and 19th. And so we're trying to line up a pretty interesting program for that. We've contacted the National Wasp Museum in Texas, I think it's in Lufkin. And they're going to send a speaker up for us to have here to talk about the WASP program. They flew a lot of the planes into Great Falls, which then were flown by the 8th Ferry Group to Fairbanks, where they were given to the Russians. And so we'll have 3 Texans flying in that weekend. There's a Russian-flown C-47 coming in that was used in that program, and the Russians are actually bringing it here, and they're going to rendezvous here. We're also, on Friday night, they're going to be here Friday afternoon. On Friday night, we're planning a party out on the ramp. It's a chamber after-hours event. So that'll be kind of fun. Big Mouth Barbecue has agreed to bring the trailer up. We're hoping to get a band. And then we'll have Air Host is going to do 2 bars, pay bars out there on the ramp. And right there with the planes and the World War II hangar. It should be a
Where
pretty
on the
neat
ramp?
evening. Right in front of the World War II hangar. We're going to,
Cool.
yeah, we're going to caution tape an area off, probably close to Dwight's area there, and let people roam around, check out the planes, talk to the pilots, enjoy a nice evening outside, hopefully. And then Saturday we'll have open hours, probably 11:30 to 3:30, something like that. And we'll have some, probably the WASP speaker will be in here talking. There'll be some other events around that. The public will be welcome to come up, check out the planes. They're going to do some flying that weekend over town. Should be a pretty neat event. So we're also hoping to get maybe a fly-in, get a group to come in and, just pilots come in and fly in for that also to check out the planes and that type of thing. So should be a pretty neat weekend.
And that was what dates again?
They're going to arrive, the party's on the 17th,
Of June?
Yeah, no, July.
July.
And then the open house we'll have on the 18th, maybe also the 19th.
That's
We're
the
still kind of working
chamber?
on it.
We'll
Yes.
just get an email.
Yeah, we'll send you an email reminder on it. Yeah.
Probably more than one.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll be late, I'll be there.
Deb
I
and
need
I will
every
be
one of
there.
them too,
Yeah.
so I'm not discouraging you by any means.
Yeah, it should be a real historic event. And then they're going to fly these planes, at least the C-47, back into Siberia, track the Alaska-Siberia route.
Okay, is there any other items to be added to the agenda? Airport comments, Commissioner Buck?
No, sir.
Commissioner Hogan?
The CH2M Hill folks, they seem to be a significant vendor of ours.
Yep.
It's the only thing that struck me.
Yes.
Yeah, we do, they've got a 5-year services contract, so all of our engineering and planning for 5 years, goes to them. We typically, the last one around was Stelling, they were here for, I think they had 10 years. And then RS&H, which is the other component of that master plan that you saw, a lot of the things said RS&H, they have the architectural contract for 5 years. So they're the architect that did the terminal, and they're also doing the terminal components of that master plan.
You're correct with that statement. Commissioner Goods, any comments? Commissioner Swenson?
Just to express my support, John.
Oh, thank you.
And all of it, I appreciate what you do. It's a great job.
Commissioner Evans?
Nope.
I have no comments except for I would agree because I see the checks coming through and it's a challenge working with the FAA. And it's a limited group of people that I think have the tolerance to deal with the FAA with all the rules and regulations. So that's, but yes, they are a significant vendor. They're probably by far our largest vendor. I would
Well,
think.
depending on so like next year,
Yeah, we have a lot of
Materials will
design
definitely
going
be
on.
the top.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I mean, we're prepping for a very big program right now. I mean,
Yeah.
with $3 million in the can, and then $10 million coming, and then a master plan on top of that, that's a bunch of design and planning work. But then next year, of course, we are into construction, so almost certainly our top vendor would be United next year as we transition that program into construction.
It's a good time to be the engineer of record for the airport. Because they get basically a percentage, so.
But that contract, I think, it is probably up for rebid this year or next year. And so what we've said about that is we would likely keep them on the airfield through the completion of that 1634 project, because the only element that'll be after next summer is the redeclination of the runway, which is essentially just changing the name and a compass orientation. It doesn't make sense to switch engineers for that. But then the new elements that we would start into, next year and the year after, it makes sense to start to transition those into the new engineering contract. Last time around, I think we had 2 board members on that committee. I think it was 2 board members, Rod, and I abstained from that one because I came from that industry, so I don't sit on that one. I was employed by one of the engineers that, I don't know if they've ever applied for work here, but they might. And so I sit out of that one. I think we had 2 board members and Rod and maybe Sharon. Were you on that?
Sharon,
Yeah, so we'll probably be putting a committee together again this fall to look at that contract.
Okay. Any comments from the public?
I got a couple of questions. That PFC application, that number 5, you'd mentioned about the SRE and adding on to the building. Can those funds also be used to do the paving? Okay.
Yeah, we can, yeah. We were hoping we'd get decent bid prices, maybe even this year, and could add the quantities in, but obviously we didn't. So next year with that big program, we'll probably put that into the budget for during the big paving project next year and try to get that area paved. For those of you who may not remember, when we did the SRE building, we had all that utility work to get the utilities down there. And so we didn't pave the apron around the SRE building. It's all compressed gravel with a tack coat on the top of it. And we cut that out as a cost savings, kind of like what we're talking about with this year. And we plan to come back and pick that up during a big paving project. It's held up surprisingly well, but obviously we don't want it to be that way much longer. So probably next year we'll try to get that area paved with the big runway program.
I have one other question too. You're saying that there's a transverse slope on that runway 1634. Which way does it slope?
Drains towards the river.
To the, kind of the southwest,
Okay.
Yeah.
airport south.
Yeah, which is where the runoff, the ravine that we own over there, our primary drainage is that over there. So like what I was saying, it's kind of asinine to grade part of the runway to go uphill, because then we're gonna have to regrade drainage to get it around the runway back over there.
Are they gonna let you do that though?
It's anyone's guess anymore.
Because when they redid the line of sight on the main runway, 321, I thought that was a requirement that they had to crown out.
Yeah, typically nowadays a new runway would be crowned. It's just, it used to be that the FAA used modifications to standard for reasonable things like that. I mean, how often does a center wheel touch down exactly on the crown? Chances are you're landing a transverse one way or the other anyway. So it's not a safety issue. I mean, that runway's been around longer than most of us, and I'm not aware of crashes, happening over there. It just drains that way. And then the FAA even allows an offset crown. So part of the question is, well, what if we just paved a little thicker, near the edge, and so a portion of it crowned? That probably meets the requirements. I mean, how silly is that? So that's part of what the engineer is trying to wrestle out of the FAA is, it's just amazing the amount of consternation right now within the FAA in trying to get an answer out of them. Even this taxiway issue with the line of sight, trying to get an answer on that in a timely fashion that would allow the program to move forward. We're 2 years behind on that program, 2 years now, and the reason for that is because we can't get straight answers out of the FAA.
If we crown it also, it's about 2/3 or more of a total reconstruction.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I know the crowning, that was part of the cost driver on.
I suggest we pave it with money.
With the crowning and all the earth moving to get it done.
Okay, unless there is any further items, come before the board, and I declare this meeting adjourned. Thank you for attending.
Need a signature from you.
Wow, man, that was a marathon.
Kidding.
Easier on
Rest
the-
your voice now for 2 hours.
I got
Three hours.
An hour late.
The horse.
Just another.
On that MDOT meeting, I typed that, just
Thank you for following
I don't think it's not really new.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah, and I imagine we'll probably.
There you go.
Well, I did see, I was